Right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm going to spotlight myself, and I'm going to spotlight our panelists. Actually, I'll keep it on me for a minute. Welcome to our webinar today. Really important topic that we're going to discuss. And we got a great turnout of attendees today. Appreciate you being here, especially during June. There's a lot of things competing for our attention right now, including just charging our batteries. And the fact that you all showed up tells me that this is a really important topic. My name is Jason Johnson. I represent the WhyTry organization, and I get the really fortunate opportunity to moderate these webinars. I've got on with me today a great panelist, and I believe we have one more joining. And we're going to be talking about suicide prevention and resilience. Really important topic right now. Now, let me make one request on this before we get into it. One of the fun things about these webinars, now we started these webinars about, it's been 2 years now. It was the beginning of 2020. It's been over 2 years. Oh my goodness, time flies. We started these at the beginning of 2020 as a response to the pandemic, when all of us were staying home, all of our events were canceled. Organizationally, we've been around for about 20 years, and our ability to stay connected with our friends and our colleagues has always been really important to us. So when the pandemic hit, one of the things we realized we really needed to do was to be able to stay in contact with our friends and our colleagues. And we started doing these webinars really as a way to stay connected, but also as a way to try to provide some discussion and some tools and strategies to kind of help get us through a particularly difficult time. And difficult 2020 turned into difficult 2021. And, we're still dealing with challenges that have come from that. And then a lot of the existing challenges that have now just been brought to surface at a more, I think, more obvious level than before. And so these webinars have been a really nice way to kind of build out community and maintain relationships, and in many cases, create new relationships through this, and technology has allowed us to do that. And so we've kept them going. And one of the things I've learned in doing these is that the conversation that exists in the chat in many cases is just as important as the conversation that's going on here live over Zoom. So one thing I want to request from all of you is, if you're willing, open up your chat tool and take a look at where you type in a message. You'll see it says "to," and then there's a little drop-down menu that says either "to everyone" or "to hosts and panelists" or to something else. If it says anything other than hosts and panelists, or excuse me, if it says anything other than everyone, then we can't see your message. So if you'll adjust that to everyone, then that will really help, I think, add to the engagement that takes place in the chat. Now, I'm going to ask you to give me just 1 minute. I'm just troubleshooting with one of our panelists. Greg, I'm going to speak right to you. I'm wondering if you may be on the wrong link. I can see you as an attendee, but I'm not seeing you as a panelist. Greg, I'm going to resend right now the panelist link, and check your email and click on that to hop in as a panelist. I'm going to be doing that right now. And Greg, I'm going to send you a direct message telling you what email I sent that to. Okay, so double check that. We'll see if that gets it. Appreciate all your patience. Okay. Yeah, this is wild, Greg. I'm seeing you as an attendee still, not as a panelist. Did you check the link that I just emailed over to you? Double check. Okay, let me. Oh, there you are. Our second panelist just showed up. Greg, Greg, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
I've been enjoying all those text messages and the music. It was great.
It's a good exercise in resilience. Let me jump right into it now so we can be respectful of time. So Greg, I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to introduce our panelist, Amy. I've already introduced the topic, which is suicide prevention and resilience, and then we'll get right into it. We're scheduled to go about an hour. We may go a couple minutes over because this is a really important topic. Absolutely thrilled to have the following panelists with us, and I'm going to spotlight everybody so we can all be seen. There we go. All right. First, we have Dr. Greg Hudnall, former high school principal and associate superintendent. Dr. Hudnall has been involved with suicide prevention for the past 30 years and is nationally sought after for his experience in postvention. He's the founder of the school-based program Hope Squad, which has been responsible for over 5,000 students referred for help and over 1,000 hospitalized. The Hope Squad program is now in over 950 schools around the world. For over 15 years, Dr. Hudnall has led a statewide volunteer suicide crisis team that has responded to over 50 youth suicides. He's presented at over 100 national and state conferences on suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. He also presents on bullying, connectedness, community collaboration, and school safety. He was invited to testify before the United States Surgeon General on suicide, and he has presented to the U.S. Department of Health and at the National Conference of the American Psychiatric Association and the American Association of Suicidology. Dr. Hudnall was also invited to participate in a webinar on African Americans and suicide by the White House under Greg's direction with Hope Squad. Over 60,000 people nationwide have been trained in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, presented across the United States and in many countries around the world on suicide prevention, including to the Minister of Education for Spain, considered one of the leading experts in community and school-based suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Dr. Hudnall, welcome. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate you being
to be here with you, Jason, and with you, Amy.
Good to see you.
We also have Amy Poole. Amy is a Thrive Strategy Manager at Grant Halliburton Foundation in Dallas, Texas, working with schools to infuse mental health into the culture of academics. She has over 30 years of experience working in school systems as a special education teacher, elementary classroom teacher, reading interventionist, campus principal, and educational consultant, because she believes the mental and emotional well-being of students and their teachers is paramount to educational success. Amy works collaboratively with schools and community-based agencies and organizations to provide education and resources for mental health awareness and social emotional learning. Amy, we are thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you have some fans in the chat. I'm impressed by this. You got people looking out for it. This is awesome.
I have some kind friends and some good support.
That's good. We all need those. My name is Jason Johnson. I'll be rounding out the panel and kind of moderating discussion, as well as offering and representing the kind of the WhyTry perspective on this topic. My background is I'm a school psychologist. I came from public education about 7 years ago over to and joined the WhyTry organization, where I oversee training and research for the organization here. We've been around for about 20 years, and we specialize in resilience and social emotional learning. We have some curricula, toolkits, and training that we deliver throughout the country. We're in all 50 states. We're in the United Kingdom and Australia, This has been a kind of a really fun working relationship over the years with Greg and Amy around these topics that I know we're all really passionate about. So with that, I want to jump right into the discussion. I'm going to remove the spotlight here so that we'll only be seeing whoever's speaking. And I just wanted to start off with, because I think this is a useful way to view it. I want to start off with just having you two tell us a little bit about what you've been up to over the last year or so, specifically what you've been focusing on in your district schools or in your roles. And feel free to include in that what are some of the things you've learned or discovered through the pandemic, because I think the pandemic created an interesting lens that's allowed us to see some things a little bit differently, or bring some things to surface perhaps that didn't get as much focus as they needed before. So let's start with you, Greg, and then we'll go Amy.
Yeah, so of course we did a lot of even work online during COVID. We had a lot of families struggling, a lot of schools trying to figure it out. I think the challenge for educators and for families is making it through year one. We thought year two was just going to be a coast, that we were going to be able to return to normal. And unfortunately, I think it made it much more difficult. So we've been doing a lot of traveling. I've just been on about a 7-city tour, working with hundreds of amazing educators and a lot of young people within the school setting. So it's been fun to reconnect. We just had an evening with our master trainers from around the country that came to Provo, Utah to spend 3 days with us. Amy, got to be with Amy again. So it was just fun catching up with everybody and trying to figure out, is it possible to return to normal?
Awesome. Thank you. Amy, what have you been focusing on?
So our foundation, just before the pandemic came, had started a new project working with schools on developing strategic plans for social emotional learning and mental health awareness. So it just really gotten started going well, and then had to shift and redirect with COVID and pandemic conditions and those kinds of things. So this past year, we've been able to really start reconnecting with some of our schools and helping them begin to develop those strategic plans. Our planning platform, our model, our framework involves 6 different areas. So we're looking at public awareness campaign and education for students and training for adults, whether it's parents or staff, making sure that we are looking at the research, providing research and information to the schools, doing our own kind of data collection. We start the whole process with really investigating what are the schools already doing, and then where are those gaps and how can we start to fill in those gaps, and then looking at what some of those fill-ins are. And we look at community-based services. So in the school's local area, what services are available that would fill in some of those gaps, or then what are some programs or activities we need to fill in with. And one of those being, we know the peer-to-peer piece is so important. So Hope Squad has been a huge part of that. And then also looking at how can we do early detection and screening for early detection to make sure kids are getting the services they need. So just a lot of talking with schools, finding out where they are, and starting to develop those plans and get things in place. Hopefully this next year will go smoother than this past year has gone.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really important work. Greg, I want to throw it back to you. And I think this might be a nice opportunity to talk a little bit about your organization, specifically what you all do, what your approach is, and kind of the things you've learned and what you're currently engaged in. After that, I'm gonna move over to Amy and have you talk a little bit about how you kind of got to know Hope Squad, as well as how you got to know WhyTry, because there's some nice overlap. But Greg, tell us a little bit more about your organization, how you approach things, what you do, et cetera.
Yeah, so the Hope Squad program is a school-based suicide prevention program, peer-to-peer suicide prevention. And I think that's one of the key things, what we know is 7 out of 10 young people that take their lives will tell a friend, and then that friend will never tell an adult or never share that with anybody. So I, as a principal, unfortunately lost 5 of my students and had spoken at some of their funerals. And so I saw firsthand what was going on, and saw the need to have a school-based peer-to-peer program. And I think the thing that is unique about Hope Squads is that Hope Squad's a school-based peer-to-peer suicide prevention program that trains and mentors students nominated by their peers to perform intentional outreach with fellow students. For 100 years in public health, we've trained individuals that if you have someone that's struggling, let me know and we'll get you help. The reality is those individuals struggling with a challenge don't want anybody else to know. They're embarrassed, they're humiliated, they don't understand what they're going through. There's a variety of reasons. And what we do know is suicide is very individualized. What's an irksome for one person may be enough to push the next person off the ledge. And so we know that the most important thing we can do is train young people to be the eyes and ears and recognize those peers that are struggling, reach out and give them help, and then most important, get them to an adult. A colleague of mine, a child psychiatrist, really helped me understand it early on when he said, you could have 100 young people that are referred to their school counselor for suicidal ideation. 97 of them would never need to see a professional if they just had a friend to talk to. And what we do know from Joiner's research and Klotz and Paul Quinnet's with QPR and many others, what we're really seeing is that the number one reason young people take their lives is they feel all alone. Number one reason. So if we can find a way to intercept that, identify, provide that help and support, there's a good chance that we can prevent that from happening. We're now in about 1,300 schools around the world, and we're adding 30 to 50 new schools a month. So it's very exciting. And we are in, I just saw on the chat, we are in elementary, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 3-year middle school, 4-year high school, and 2-year college.
Awesome, thank you. Greg, I don't know if I've ever shared with you, my last 2 years in public ed, I oversaw the Hope Squad implementation up at Canyon View Junior that I was at. So
yeah, great.
Really fun. That is a powerful experience, that process of identifying that peer selected group. Really powerful experience. Amy, tell us a little bit about kind of your interaction with Hope Squad and with WhyTry, how this has been a world that you've been able to intersect with and kind of apply to your professional practice as well.
So I've told people after I came back from Hope Squad and y'all had invited me to be a part of this, I said my two worlds collided. I first knew about, in a happy way, I first knew about WhyTry when I was an educational consultant with our regional education center and just trying to help. I was in the special education department helping schools find community-based services and other resources for their children who had special needs. And WhyTry was one of those huge pieces that I felt like was really helpful, just teaching kids about their own identity and building strength in their own resilience. And I say all the time that WhyTry was SEL before there was even the conversation of SEL, just really helping kids and teachers connect and build relationships, that personal awareness, that social awareness, giving back to the community, all of those kinds of things. And then when I came to Grant Halliburton Foundation 3 years ago and found out about Hope Squad, and that was my first experience with Hope Squad, I see how they marry with each other so well, because when kids feel confident and competent and they have that strength to be able to and have voice to be able to help themselves and their friends, then they are feeling that resilience and feeling less stress and able to manage that stress. And WhyTry has a lot of training and education skills that provide that. But then Hope Squad is building that community that I think is so important for kids to feel that resilience, to know that they're not all alone. There's somebody else there with them, and educating them about what to look for and how to help their friends. And so the two just came together so well. When I look at the curriculum for Hope Squad, it is just amazing to see the resources and the education, the understanding that the kids are getting to develop, but also the teachers, because a lot of times when we're having conversations with schools about how can we infuse mental health and mental health care into the academics of school, teachers are saying, well, I don't really know, I don't have that background, I don't really know this. And Hope Squad curriculum gives them a lot of that, the skills that they need, the information they need, but WhyTry does also. So I think the curriculums for both programs are amazing and helpful, and they come together really well.
Awesome, thank you. I totally agree, and I appreciate you mentioning that. So WhyTry has been around for about 20 years, and somebody mentioned in the chat, and so I pulled this up. Somebody asked like for a kind of a base definition of resilience, and I think resilience has a really interesting connection to the topic of suicide prevention, both in a prevention. I think it aligns prevention, intervention, postvention as well. I'll pull up the definition we use. I just happened to be doing a training online this morning, so I have this slide kind of fresh at my fingertips. But the base definition kind of we use to describe resilience is the ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down, but you fight on. And then we expanded that out. We helped our founder, Christian Moore, write a book about 6 years ago called The Resilience Breakthrough. And the expanded definition we use is resilient people have both tapped and untapped reserves, enabling them to overcome and thrive as they face setbacks, challenges, and fears of daily life. And when you dig into the resilience research, one of the things that I think is really important to recognize is that from a resilience standpoint, resilience is not necessarily the elimination of challenges from a person's life. Resilience is really about changing our relationship to our challenges.
Right.
And so that concept of like bouncing back or thriving really is about changing your relationship to that challenge, so that the concept of thriving is thriving amidst adversity. And so in many cases where there's such a mental health overlap within the world of suicide and suicide prevention, the concept of resilience is really complementary and I think important within the discussion, because if we can help change individuals' relationship to their challenges, some of these challenges are really big challenges, that I may not have the magic wand to be able to eliminate from a person's life. But if I can help them change their relationship to those challenges and thrive amidst them, that becomes a really, really important piece in the equation towards all of this, towards helping an individual thrive. And so that's kind of our organizational goal. And then similar to Hope Squad, we have, a toolkit and training that can help do that. And we actually work with a lot of schools that use both. I think I really agree with you, Amy. I think they are really complementary in that regard. And like I said, there's a really cool element to Hope Squad that's really powerful, that involves that kind of creating that local community. So that's kind of how I think WhyTry fits into the equation and what our approach to resilience is. We teach skills of resilience and sources of resilience. And in many cases, what we're teaching looks like kind of traditional social emotional learning concepts or lesson plans, but then that connection directly to resilience, I think, becomes a really important piece. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that as a foundation in the education pieces, we do presentations for students and for adults all the time. And one of ours is called Bounce Back, and it is a resilience based presentation, and most of the work that we present in it has come through the research of Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg and those 7 C's of resilience. And so with the kids, that's a lot to just pour on them, the 7 C's, but with adults, helping them to understand, how do you foster resilience with kids and help them develop competence and confidence and connection and character and control and communication, all those different C's, and how those intertwine. But as we present that, so often we're faced with adults who say, I'm not resilient. I didn't know how to even do that. And so it's not only teaching students, but it's teaching adults how to model resiliency. And we're seeing that we kind of came to that presentation because there was the data showing that kids were not necessarily experiencing these years of mental health concerns and then ending up in a point of suicidal thought. They were just suddenly acting on impulse, that seemed to be the only way out. And we really want, students to have more resiliency than that, but they have to be taught that. That has to be taught and modeled and set up. And so how can we do that? And if adults don't know how to model it or to teach that, then they're not able to do it either. And so we just have to pull all of that together, not just for the kids, but for the adults as well, so that they have the skills to be resilient. And I love Christians for sources of resiliency. That is something that's always stuck with me. I was in a workshop with him one day. It was like the last breakout session of the day. And I heard him present WhyTry a couple of times. And so I was very interested, but at that point, I was like, well, Christian, where does the resiliency even come from? And this was prior to him having published his book. And he said, well, let me tell you about my research. And we spent the next hour just listening. But I think that bottom line resiliency is one of those things that not many of our kids realize. They have something that's unique about them that they can always hold on to. And if we can help them understand that, as well as a couple of the others, then they are really equipped for being able to withstand some of those hard things.
Amen to that. I want to get in now. I want to get over to what some people might consider kind of the heavy part of this topic, and it's very connected to resilience, but it's where I think Greg's expertise is really, really important. And I think a lot of people have showed up looking for this. I want to hear from both of you, but let's start with Greg. In your opinion and experience, where should educators and schools start when it comes to suicide prevention? And if you have any practical tips, because I know this can feel like such an overwhelming topic, what can you share about starting points and practical tips? Let's go, Greg, and then we'll jump over to Amy.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that teachers in the classroom can do. The most important thing, of course, which I come from an educational family and we talk about it all the time, but it's the key of having that relationship with the students, so that you recognize when they're struggling, and you're reaching out to them. Are you okay? I like to use the I message. I noticed today in class that you were struggling, and I may try to do it in a private moment. I may leave a note, or something like that, but just so that they know that I know. The second part that I train teachers, and we train thousands of teachers every year, and one of the things we focus on is having them call out the name of every young person in their classroom at least once. I was in an emergency room with a young lady who tried to take her life. My specialty is postvention, so I get called in a lot to deal with copycats or contagions. And I was in the emergency room with this young lady who tried to take her life, and she said, and kids feel this way. They feel all alone. They feel invisible. Her family was going through a nasty divorce. She felt like she didn't exist. She shared a locker, and over a 2-week period, not one person mentioned her name within the school system. Not one person, not even the kids in the hallway or anything that way. And she said, I felt invisible and I felt of no value. So why continue to exist? So there are some basic things that way. The other thing, and I've been an educator, a teacher, adjunct professor for 15 years. The other thing that we've got to really talk about with resilience, and that's allowing people to fail. You know, we try to fix it. We do it as parents, we do it as teachers, we do it because we feel sorry for the child or the student, or we're intimidated by their parents, or we don't have a good structure set up within our school system by the administration. And so we allow kids to get by. And one of the things that we know from resiliency is that we know that when we fail and we grow from that, that starts to build our resiliency. And the challenge is that we have parents now that are the snowplow parents, right? They're trying to take everything out in front of that child so they don't fail. I do a lot of training presentations to youth. We call them youth conferences in Utah. And I was doing a presentation to about 300 kids. And at the very end of my presentation, I always put up 5 slides to talk about resiliency and the ability to spring back. And at the very end, I challenge each of those young people, the next time a difficult item comes up, I want you to share it with your parents. And when your parents start to intervene, I want you to put your hands up and say, no, I really want to try to do this on my own. I know if I need help, I'll come to you, and I know you're going to be there for me, but allow me to try to deal with it. About 2 weeks later, I received an email from this amazing young lady, and she said, I just want to share my story. She said, I've been overweight and I've struggled. My parents are large, we're a large family, and I have been crucified by my peers in school for being fat. And she said, I had these 2 girls that were really picking on me in PE. And I came home crying one day, and my mother, Mama Bear, right, was going to go rip some heads off. And I said, Ma, let me try to do this. And she said, I went back and worked on it and finally confronted these girls who now have become my friends. She said that would have never happened if I allowed my mom to come in and try to fix it. So there are some basic things, understanding the warning signs of suicide, what to watch for. Anyone talking about suicide, anyone writing in their journals, writing on their books or anything that way about wanting to die, not wanting to live anymore, feeling like they're at the end of their rope. Those are the times that it's important for that educator to reach out and ask if that student is okay. And if they're not comfortable, then getting their school social worker or their school counselor to intervene. So, you know, the basics of relationship, allowing students to fail, being there to help them along the way, and then calling on every student at least once in class.
That's awesome. Thank you. Amy, what in your opinion is a great starting point for, or an important starting point for educators when it comes to prevention, and what ideas do you have as far as like practical tips or strategies for getting into that?
A lot of times I'll have teachers say, I don't have time to do one more thing. And what I want them to understand is I'm not asking them to do one more thing. I'm asking them to be intentional about how they're doing what they're already doing. And so when we're talking about differentiated instruction, I think that is a powerful way to help students learn to handle problems and learn to handle them on their own with the scaffolding and the support that they need, so that they do have voice and choice, and they get options and what they're learning or how they're learning it or how they're demonstrating their learning. And that's something that good teaching is just already doing, but being intentional about how you do that. I also think activities that involve community connections, so volunteering or service projects on campus or in the community as a whole, really enable students to have the opportunity to talk with their peers, to problem solve with their peers, to develop strategic plans for themselves and set goals and see that they can accomplish those goals. That's very empowering and helps them feel more confident and competent in other areas as they start to do that. And then just building their mental muscle. We talk about, building physical strength by working out and pushing ourselves beyond the comfort zone, but we have to do the same thing with our mental muscle. And so challenges are really important part of building that mental muscle. Yes, they don't need to be overwhelming, but they do need to be enough challenge, and kids learn to work through some of those challenges on their own in order to be able to handle it on their own later. And I think too often we try to protect our students. So when they're faced with a hard thing, rather than trying to help them figure it out, rather than figuring it out for them, telling them, go try this, asking them, what do you think would work? What are some ideas you have? And then carrying it even further to say to them, and what do you think the outcome is going to be? If that's the one you choose, if that's the option you choose, how is that going to play out in the long run? Because as a teenager, as a child, you don't have that capacity to look at the outcome. But if we can guide them in that direction, they begin to develop that ability to make good choices. And as we're talking with them about choices, when we listen to them, which I think is such a crucial point, to listen to their ideas and their thoughts, when we listen to them, we can begin to know when they are making that transition and build that trust with them. We're hearing what they're saying, and we are there to support them, but we're not trying to tell them what to do all the time, that they are learning to handle things on their own, and showing them that we believe in them.
You know, just going along with what Amy just said, that one of the things that I found to be very helpful, and that is be willing to share your own personal failures.
Absolutely.
in an appropriate way. You know, there are specific guidelines of boundaries of what you can talk about as an educator, as a teacher. But I know when I stand in front of my class and talk about, you know, this week I'm out of money. My wife and I wanted to go on a date and we just don't have the money. So this is what we're having to do. Or my stupid car broke down on the way to school and I'm frustrated, but they see how you handle it. And the more that we can role play appropriately so that they can see, wow, you know, because you educators, this message is to you that I know many of us have forgotten it, but many of the young people in your class respect and admire you. Yes. Think about why you became an educator. In many situations, it was because you were touched by another educator that you just loved and respected. There are many, many young people who still admire you as an educator and are looking for that hope in their life and that example. So the more that we can come across that appropriate role modeling of how we deal with difficult challenges and things and how we react to them can be very helpful for the young people.
Absolutely. You know, I think about, you know, kids as they get into those teenage years, beginning to push away from their parents and wanting their parents' opinion on everything and wanting to do things on their own. That's part of natural development, and they're drawn to their peers and how their peers would handle it. But that's a place where teachers can be that adult, solid voice in their head if they facilitate those conversations, or you know, set up that conversation in a classroom setting where their peers can also share ideas, but then their voice of reason is there. And that's so helpful to parents who really want their kids just to listen to them, but they won't listen to them anymore. But the kids are still hearing that adult reason in their ear as they're having those conversations and real situations that they're dealing with.
You know, it's interesting what we've learned from COVID, and we're scrolling through the data, which there's a lot of it out there, but it would be interesting on the chat, just how many of you believe suicide went up or down during the 2 years of COVID that we've struggled with? Yeah, can I tell you, I'm seeing up, 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 up. I want to sing that song, right? Here's the challenging thing. Those of us that are involved in suicide prevention trenches every day really believed it was going to just blow up on us and that we were going to be in trouble. The reality is suicides went down by almost 3% across the board. And here's why. Families were being forced to stay home together. They were having meals together. Kids were not being bullied at school, so they were staying home. But families were staying home together. They were watching movies. They were having meals and doing other things. A colleague of mine who's a psychologist, he said he came home one day, he'd gone to the grocery store, came home 10 o'clock. And he said, I'm never home during the week. And it was like a Tuesday. And he said, I got out of my car and he said, I live on a cul-de-sac with 6 other homes. And I looked around and here were all these families out in their yards doing things together. So here's the amazing thing. What we found is that 3 things. Number one, kids were not being bullied. The second thing is that families were having meals together, reconnecting, and finding that relationship that we haven't had for many years. Let's be honest, we get in our cars in the morning and all we do is run, run, run. And then we have that laptop or that telephone in front of us, and we're not listening to what our children are saying. We're not engaging like what we used to. And then the third thing that was fascinating is that as the family stayed home and started to reconnect with each other, they started to notice that some of their children, or notice that one of their children was struggling with depression, anxiety, and other things. And it's fascinating to see that relationship and how crucial and important that is. You know, Amy's comment was right on that. By the time you're in junior high, it's more important to have a friend than it is to belong to a family. Hard to believe that as us amazing adults, right? That we want those relationships with our children. But remember what Maslow says: families provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety. And then society provides everything else. And so those kids are out there trying to figure out how to fit in. What we did see is anxiety go up. We saw cutting go up. And we saw it even moving down into a younger age, even down into elementary. The CDC has some amazing reports out on COVID and the challenges that have happened, but a reduction in suicide, fascinating, by almost 3%. So when families talk to me, or individuals, and they say, what's the number one prevention? And I always respond, I don't care if it's drug or alcohol, pornography, sex, teenage sex, or suicide, it's having one meal a day as a family without any electronics, so that we're learning to feel safe and to feel connected.
You know, Greg, I think
Thank you.
We just had the conversation right before we went on. I was talking with one of the other ladies that I work with. We had called her daughter to get some real kid info. And in the conversation, she was sharing that she had had her phone taken away from her, and she lived through it, and it was all fine. And I said to her mom later, you did not take that phone away with the intention of her learning that lesson that life will go on without a phone, but what a powerful lesson for her to have learned. And I think I've heard so many parents say, well, I could never take the phone away from my child. That's their connection. And yes, it is. They do need that connection sometimes. But it's also sometimes that discipline has those happy little extras that come along that allow kids to learn, yes, hard things happen and I can live through that and it's going to be okay on the other side. Wasn't fun, but it's okay. But as adults, if we don't hold them to some standards and some expectations, we take that ability of them being able to develop that awareness away. And so when we're talking to teachers about setting standards with scaffolding, setting standards where you're there to help support kids no matter what, you're going to support them, but still holding them accountable, I think that is so important for them to be able to develop that strength.
Yeah. You know, the challenge, and I just put the CDC report about suicides going down during the pandemic. I just put it in the chat to everybody. So one of the things that we found out is that, and I saw a couple of chats from it, is number one, we've seen an increase in cutting, especially down into the elementary age. I oversee a crisis team for the state of Utah, and we've dealt with a 4th grade suicide on campus. We've dealt with 2 5th grade suicides. And as we do training with elementary teachers, they share with me the increase that we're seeing with the anxiety, the cutting, the moodiness, the depression with these younger people. One of the things that we've learned over the last little while is the number 2 places kids are cutting, under the armpit and between the toes. Now you and I go, holy mackerel. But for the last 15 years, we've trained parents what to look for and where, so they check their bodies and everything. But now kids are learning how to hide it. And unfortunately, there is more and more dark websites for kids to go to share that cutting. We know the cutting comes from, of course, the depression. We also know from being bullied. We also know from being left out and other things that young people are struggling with.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing the source on that data as well. It's interesting. One of those connecting points I think we have, you've talked about the importance of that dinner at home or whatever that may be. I think that connects back when you look at resilience research. The most consistent protective factor that shows up across like 40 years of research, the most consistent protective factor that is present in the lives of kids that rank high on resilience scales is the presence of a caring adult. And one of the cool things about that I always like to kind of preach to people when I'm training educators is that caring adult doesn't have to be a parent or a biological parent. That caring adult can be a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a caregiver. It puts educators, I think, in really unique roles because we have the opportunity to really be that caring adult, and that can become the foundation for resilience to start to grow, and it can really build out and become that protective factor that is so important from a resilience standpoint, but also from a suicide prevention standpoint. So awesome. And go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I get too excited about all these things.
Well, I was just going to say, no, the nice thing about that is that the thing I love about that is it makes it so that can benefit any kid, regardless of their family, the stability of their family, what that may look like. We teach a thing called the flood zone in the WhyTry material, which is this space a person occupies when they're overwhelmed with their challenges. And I always point out a lot of times kids that are in the flood zone come from families that are in the flood zone. And, a lot of times when we have kids that are struggling, they may have parents in the home that are struggling as well that can make it really tough. But when we can establish a community, establish an environment where we have those caring adults that can be teacher, coach, mentor, whoever it is, maybe even within that school setting, that becomes a really, really important source for resilience to start to grow, to start to foster. And it's such a vital piece. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. One of the things I want to mention before I forget, as we were building our model in Utah as a high school principal and then at the district office, associate superintendent, we realized the lapses out there of in Utah, we have a lot of rural area. You look at the top 10 states for suicide, Montana's number one, then you drop down to Idaho, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Alaska, South Dakota, North Dakota, et cetera. Fascinating research on altitude. But we spent a week with the CDC, and they really trained us on a term that I wasn't familiar with, and it's called rurality. So the more rural you have, the less number of resources, the less ability to talk to other people and get the help that you need. And one of the resources I want to mention, because I know that when I do a webinar, I always like to have people walk away with something that they feel like I'm going to be able to use. So use parentguidance.org. is an amazing website that was developed by a very wealthy individual in Utah for us to use with parents. It's free, and it's a four-stage. It has about 100 professional therapists online from around the country. The first step when you go on is ask a therapist a question, and you can ask any question that you want. And then they have thousands of questions that have already been answered. The second one is you can take a lesson for free. And then, of course, if you want therapy, then you sign up and pay for that. But it's a great resource for your parents. It's a great resource for help out there. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there before I forgot about it.
I appreciate that. I'm going to mention at the end, but we're going to offer up our parent guide as well. We have a parent guide built around our resilience model that we're going to offer to attendees as well at the end. In the interest of time, I want to keep it moving. Let me give you a couple things to respond to because there's so many important pieces on this. I'm curious. I'll give you kind of a two-part question, and I'll let you kind of free form it however you want to respond. But the first part is, this is a challenging thing to discuss. A lot of educators don't know where to start. This can be a topic that people are even nervous to bring up in general. Some of that is for existing stigma about just talking about it. Also, just because of the overwhelming nature. Any tips on that? And then I think this kind of connects to the other half. The other half that I will mention is I oversee training for the WhyTry organization, and I have trained thousands of educators and mental health professionals. And a thing that I have found over the last year, and I have trained weekly for 4 years, 5 years now. The thing I have really noticed over the last couple of years is that, especially this last year, educators and mental health professionals and service professionals themselves as the adult facilitators are also feeling really, really overwhelmed themselves. And in many cases, they're feeling very discouraged and are starting to lose hope. Any tips for the adults that are trying to facilitate in this that may be discouraged or losing hope themselves as well? So kind of two-part, how can we get better at talking about this? And what can the grown-ups do that themselves are feeling discouraged and overwhelmed by this? Let's go, let's mix it up. Let's go Amy and then Greg.
I will say, as far as the conversations with kids, looking for those resources that give you the verbiage, give you the words, give you the strategies. Even if you don't have that background in mental health, you can read a little bit, get an idea, get a strategy, and move forward with that. So that is where I think Hope Squads, Parent Peace, their school-wide resources are great if they have Hope Squad in their school. The things on parentguidance.org are very appropriate for teachers to understand some of that and use some of those tools. Just glancing through what I have been able to see on WhyTry, I think there's some resources there. So educating yourself as a professional in how do you have a conversation. We talk to people all the time about being able to have the conversation when everything's okay and people are calm and cool and not waiting until the moment of crisis to have that conversation and begin to understand what's going on with kids, asking them, listening to them. I think listening is the biggest part of that. But as far as teachers, we hear this all the time, that the teachers are feeling overwhelmed. So the first thing I want to say to teachers, you're not alone. Every teacher is struggling right now, and that's not uncommon. But I do know, as a former teacher, you feel like you have that responsibility to just keep moving, just keep going, just keep doing. You just work harder and harder and harder. And we as adults and as teachers have to learn to not just tell kids to take care of themselves, to do all those things, get plenty of rest, eat nutritious foods, drink plenty of water, get some exercise, get outside, find things that are joyful and take time to do those, build connections with your community, all of those kinds of things. We have to model that. We have to show our kids that we're doing that, and show our own personal children that, as well as our students. Because they're not going to listen to us if we're just telling them. They have to see how that looks and what that looks like. So modeling that, I think, is a hugely important part. The other thing I will say is, it's not just mind and body. We talk a lot about health and physical health and mental health, but there's our spiritual well-being. And so I think, through pandemic and through COVID, people were isolating more and at home more, and maybe lost some connection to that spiritual support, whether they go to church or to a mosque or to a temple or whatever that might be. They've just lost that sense of spiritual identity that maybe they need to get back to. And so any way you can start to reconnect there is going to help fuel some of that positive spirit, that hopefulness, that we just get bogged down with so much and so many things going on, and we forget that part of helping ourselves. And then the last thing I'll say is, we tell our students and we tell our adults to look for that 3-2-1 rule. So often we have lived in the frustration, the stress, the trouble, the challenge, the trauma for so long that we've forgotten there's life without that. And so we forget that, oh, maybe I do need to stop and get some professional help. And so we are teaching our kids a 3-2-1, 3 or more of these stressful things, traumatic things, all at one time for 2 weeks or more, then you need professional help. This is beyond you just making a lifestyle change. This may be that you need some therapy, or you need some medication or something else, and start with your doctor. But don't just keep trying to plug along, just existing in the yuck. There's hope out there. There's help for you. And so if you understand the 3-2-1 rule, it makes it something tangible that you can hang on to.
Awesome. Thank you. Amy, real quick before we jump over to Greg, and we're going to go a couple minutes over, but this is an important topic. I appreciate you you being willing to stick with us. We're recording this, by the way, as well. Amy, somebody requested if you could repeat the 3-2-1 rule again.
So it's 3 or more of those stress indicators, all those things that we talk to kids about that indicate they're experiencing stress and potential depression. So they're not able to sleep well, they're not eating right, they're feeling isolated, they are having headaches or stomach aches, they are all those different things that we've talked to kids about that indicate they're experiencing stress. So 3 or more of those for 2 weeks at a time, all at one time. 3-2-1.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Hudnall, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on, 1, how we can get better at discussing this, and 2, any tips for the grown-ups that may be losing hope, feeling discouraged, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, I would say the first thing is we're afraid to talk about it. We're afraid to talk about suicide. We're afraid to mention it because we think it's going to give someone the idea. When in reality, young people don't want to die. They want the pain to go away, but they don't know how to make that pain go away. And because of social media and other things, suicide attempting has become very prevalent. For every adult that dies by suicide, there's 25 other adults who attempt. For every young person, and young person for me is up to age 26, for every young person that dies by suicide, there's upwards of 150 to 200 other kids who attempt. So we see this amazing different ratio of young people than we see with adults. We do focus groups every year with Hope Squad members and Hope Squad advisors and stuff. And a great lesson for me this year. So everybody's hurting. I don't care who you are, teacher, kids, parents, the local police department, it doesn't matter who it is, but every one of us are hurting. We've lost 2 years of our life. And Amy gave some really good examples and things that we can do with better diet, better sleep, exercise, getting out in the sun, and being connected are all really critical. In one of our focus groups this year, we always ask the Hope Squad members, and we're in elementary, 4th, 5th, 6th, middle school, 3 years, high school, 4 years. But in visiting with some high school kids, we asked them, what lessons are we not teaching that we should teach next year? And this amazing young person said, everyone's angry. I'm angry. My parents are angry. The teachers are angry. Everybody's angry. And I would really like a lesson this next year on forgiveness. I'll be honest, I about teared up when I heard that. She said, we've got to figure out how to deal with this anger. And can I challenge each of us to figure out that thing? How are you dealing with your frustration and your anger? The economy's not going to get better right now. The things that we're facing in the next year may not be a COVID, but they're going to be just as challenging for us educators who don't make a lot of money, right? It's going to be difficult. But I love that concept of the ability to let that anger go, and the ability to work on it, because then you're going to have the ability to influence others. We're tired. We're wore out. We've got to regroup, because next year those kids are counting on us. We are some of those individuals that are on the front lines every single day dealing with mental health issues. And, to those of you out there, I compliment you and I encourage you to stay with it. Find some time to do the things that Amy talked about this summer, but then have the courage to come back, because we are at the crossroads in our society. And if we don't get a handle on this, it's going to get much worse. So, to teach, improve anger management and other things, there's a lot of resources that are out there that are available. And I don't think we have a lot of time to go into it. But for me, talking about mental health, I have to be healthy in order to help someone else. It doesn't do any good if I'm struggling emotionally, if I'm struggling physically and am wore out, because I don't have the patience. And you see that with people speeding by, you know, because we don't have the patience right now. And we've got to find it. We've got to be able to find that, to bring it back so that we can help these young people who look to us every single day to try to survive with the challenges they're dealing with.
Thank you. Let's stick on that that topic. I think this will probably be the last, second to last question I asked, but the idea of resources. I know you already mentioned a couple, but do you have any resources, tips, hotlines, tools, guides, etc. you would recommend to have, you know, for people to kind of have at their fingertips as they approach this? Let's go, Greg, and then Amy.
Well, you know, there's multiple things, and I'll put them on the chat. One of the books my son introduced me to, and it's called The Gift of Failure. And and my son bought 50. He's an assistant principal at one of the largest high schools in the state of Utah, and they're high-end performers. And when he would catch kids in trouble, when they would set up the parent meeting, the first thing he would do is meet with the parents privately before they brought the student in and share this book. It's called The Gift of Failure by Jessica Lahey, Lahey. She's a teacher. She talks about, it's a really well-written book. And so that would be the first line of defense for me, that when I'd be meeting with teachers or parents during parent conference and other things that way. And yes, my high school, we did home visits. We actually, we took 3 days and went to the homes and met with the parents and the students within their environment. The second thing is go to our website, hopesquad.com. You can look under resources that are available to help you with ideas and suggestions about talking about it. And then there are numerous resources out there about self-care, self-help, and you'll see some of those on our website.
Thank you. Amy, go ahead.
I do love that book that Greg just recommended. I think it's wonderful. Another one that I've really enjoyed has been How to Raise an Adult by Julia Lythcott-Himes, where she's just talking about, you know, what can we do as adults to raise adults who are going to be responsible and capable and empowered and resilient. So it's a good resource. I go back a lot of times to Move This World. I think they offer a lot of really good webinars and resources for teachers who are trying to integrate social emotional learning into their curriculum without adding a bunch of extra things for them to do. They talk a lot about how to approach kids, how to respond to kids and build relationships and connections and those kinds of things. And I will say, in the North Texas area, if you happen to be in the North Texas area, we have a searchable database for mental health providers. And so it's called herefortexas.com. And if someone's looking for a mental health provider, they can go in and enter their zip code and answer a few questions. It will get them connected to, get them a list of providers that meet their criteria. That sometimes is very difficult for people to do. And so we also have a navigation service that you can call the number on herefortexas.com to access our navigators, and they will help people search for those providers. So in the North Texas area, that's one thing you can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am afraid we're out of time. Here's the question I want to end on. And I think the plan is we're going to hopefully have a continued discussion on this in the fall. I mentioned as far as resources, the resources I would recommend is we have a book we published called The Resilience Breakthrough that outlines our sources of resilience. Amy referenced it earlier. That's a great resource for understanding a model of resilience. I think at a little bit better level. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to put up a QR code at the end. And for anybody that hits that, we will share our parent guide, which is a parent guide to resilience that we've gotten really great feedback on as well. And that's a great resource for all of you as parents, as well as that's something you can share with parents of kiddos that you're working with as well. So I'll come back to that. But before we do that, I want to wrap up on this question. I want to end on a positive note because this can be a heavy topic. Share any recent success that you want to celebrate, or just something in general that's given you hope right now. And let's go Amy, and then we'll go Dr. Hudnall, and then I'll wrap it up. Amy, any recent success you want to celebrate, or something that's given you hope right now?
When I came to this position 3 years ago, we were starting with 7 little campuses that were interested in trying to be more mindful of mental health care and social emotional learning. And we're ending this year with about 89 campuses rather than 7 in 24 different districts and charters and private schools. We have gone from 6 Little Hope Squads to we're at 33 and have 14 more coming up or 11 more coming up within the year. So people are talking about mental health. They are looking for ways they can support students and themselves. We're changing the culture around mental health, and I think that is very exciting that we're making some positive inroads into getting kids the help that they need and helping people feel more positive in this time where it doesn't always feel positive.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Greg, go ahead.
In our family, we always end our Zooms or phone calls with one positive for the week. And for me, my kids took me out for Father's Day, my 12 grandkids and my 4 children, and we went to a rodeo in Pleasant Grove, Utah last night, and had one of my favorite experiences. Taking time for yourself, being with those that you love and that you care about, being with those that you enjoy to spend time with, fills your bucket. And so take that time to be with those that you care the most about.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll share one. Sometimes I get to share a little personal here, but that's all right. This is the way I feel safe with you all. You're part of my community now. I mentioned before, my oldest son, he graduated this year. That was a great accomplishment. We're so super excited. Graduated high school. He's in the Philippines right now for about 6 weeks. And he's on his network for his cell phone is kind of in and out, but he's taking videos, and it's like I'm talking to a different kid. He keeps telling me about this whole new world he's experiencing. We're leaving Marco Polos for each other, and we'll come back and he'll be like, Dad, he'll talk about, seeing poverty or seeing this new experience that he hasn't seen to that level before. And I can see his heart like bursting out of his chest, wanting to learn more about culture, learn more about people. And one of the great things that has come from kind of connecting through the pandemic is we've gotten really good at using technology to help keep us closer and build out our communities. And I'm so pleased at the experience he's getting. He's able to share it with us as family. I'm able to come on here and be part of this community with all of you. We have such a unique opportunity now. One of the common things that guests keep telling us that we have onto these webinars, it's some version of find your group, find your community, find your tribe. And we have so many great opportunities for that. And I think it connects back to human connection and finding caring adults, even for us in our lives. Find your community. I'm grateful to be part of this. Really grateful for my affiliation with Greg and with Amy and with all of you. Let's end up with a big virtual round of applause for our panelists. First of all, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you so much, Dr. Hudnall, and then thank you to all of you as panelists for for showing up. This is such a great community to be a part of. We're going to keep doing these. The plan is to keep doing them, keep having great guests back. Hopefully you'll keep showing up, bring some friends, tell people about it. But I think that's all I've got. Amy, Greg, great job today. Fantastic information as always. We're going to wrap it up. I'm going to play us out with a little bit of music.